Welcome to the Endurance Drive podcast.
Our mission is to share the key principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Katie.
Katie, Happy New Year. Let's go.
Happy New Year. I'm so excited. It's 2025. We have hit the ground running just like we've been talking about for basically the entire off season.
We were talking before we started, and I was like, normally every year, I'd like, oh, Christmas, I sort of taper off Christmas, and the Charlie Brown music kind of continues in the 26th, 27th, 28th, and I sort of eventually give it up. But this year, I was like, nope, it's over. It's done. It's off. Let's go.
Directly into the pain cave. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Exactly. But I was thinking about it. It's interesting. So this is be my 9th or 10th year coming up of coaching. And I feel like this year it's like, I don't know, I just feel like it just takes a while to get good at anything. And I think part of why I'm excited about 2025 is that I just feel like 2024 was a big year of learning, and just like, you leverage all the knowledge you have, it's kind of like training. And I feel like I'm excited about 2025, probably just because I feel like in some ways I kind of have my shit together a little bit. I feel like after like almost 10 years of doing this, but I don't know. How do you feel?
No, I feel very similarly. And I also want to shout out to the athletes that took us on when we did not have our shit together. And we were sort of like, we're just going to try some things and see what works. And hopefully people achieve their goals. But this year I feel like very organized and very motivated. And also just feel like we've seen so much in coaching now. We've seen so many athlete journeys and stories. And obviously everybody is unique, but there are some themes that, you just get the reps in over and over again. So hopefully it'll be a big year for us, for coaches, for athletes. But yeah, I'm just super excited.
It's going to be a good year. It's going to be a speedy year for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah. And so, yeah, I just want to also just thank all of our athletes for placing their trust in us, because it's a big deal. Whenever I have an initial athlete interview, people sometimes say, well, I have to take my time to think about it. I'm like, great, take your time. Like, this is actually one of the biggest decisions you're probably going to make in a very long time. So take your time. If you want to like talk again on Zoom, we can talk again on Zoom, because it's a big deal to place like all your time and energy, like a big part of your life, into somebody's hands to say, here, tell me what to do.
Yeah, and often that person is a stranger. Like sometimes we coach people that we've known before, but often people like see our website or something and they reach out and we hop on that call. And I similarly agree. I say no one is ever allowed to decide yes on the phone or on the Zoom in that moment. You need to go, need to sit with it, and then email me back in a couple of days once you've chewed on it a little bit. But the more I kind of give people time to do that, it seems like people keep coming back. So maybe we're doing something right. I don't know. Either we just fake it till we make it, or maybe we are actually crushing it.
Well, we're just really mostly a media company now anyways. I do just want to get on that. So that's it.
I thought that we were a life psychology podcast / strength training / Nordic skiing / all the things except triathlon.
We are, yeah. And we're going to talk about that. So, all right. So what's our main content today anyway?
Yeah, so we were thinking a little bit about how this podcast, I say it over and over again in the beginning, it's all about our coaching and training principles. I say the principles that structure approach, et cetera, et cetera. Can't even remember it right now. But we haven't ever taken an episode and actually just distilled all of those principles into like a one-stop shop of what we're about. So we figured, maybe if we're having a new athlete come to us and they're like, hey, what are you talking about? What do you care about? And they don't want to listen to 60 hours of the podcast, then we could just send them to this episode. So our goal today is to kind of go through some of the top high-level things that have come up throughout the podcast, that have come up in our interactions with our athletes, but that's sort of just define who we are and what our coaching philosophy is. And this is not an exhaustive list. We could probably do part 2 and 3 and 4 kind of throughout the year, and maybe we'll do that. But we just want to get people started on what we are all about at the Endurance Drive and what has worked for us in coaching and as athletes to get success in lots of different kind of endurance goals and objectives.
Yeah, I think part of the goal today too is just when us reflecting on our principles and philosophy, is that hopefully this will maybe inspire other folks to say, hey, it is a new year, and it's always a good time to look back and say, okay, what am I trying to accomplish? Or what am I really all about? So maybe some of these things, so maybe not all these things will resonate with you, but maybe something will resonate with you, and that'll send you off on some other journey and say, oh yeah, I need to write my own set of like philosophy and principles down.
Totally. And I find that like, even if just like for your goals and objectives, we talked about goal setting a lot, but being intentional about like, what is my purpose? What drives me? I think all of this is in the same class of ideas. So we will send people over to those episodes if you want to do some of your own goal mapping, et cetera. We've talked about it a lot, but yeah, today we're all about principles. But before we do that, Jim, should we get started with some coaching and training insights?
Okay, let's go.
Imagine you just said no, and then the podcast ended.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And the gear pick of the week is...
Exactly. We're going wild in 2025. Okay, so my first insight has to do with all of this excitement that we've been talking about. And I find that for me as an athlete and also in the athletes that I'm coaching, we do want to avoid coming out of the gates too hot. And what that means is there is a lot of enthusiasm. There's a lot of excitement. A lot of people hit like January 1 and they're like, let's go. I'm so ready. And keep in mind that your mind might actually be a little bit ahead of where your body is kind of coming out of the off season. And it is important to ease back into training gradually. So, as a coach, I sometimes observe athletes actually being at higher risk for getting injured early in the season because they just have so much enthusiasm to really push it without necessarily having the aerobic base and or the durability foundation. And similarly, I'll usually put in the first couple weeks of someone's workouts, and sometimes athletes are like, this is kind of easy. Like, could I have some more stuff? And usually my answer is no, at least for the first like 4 weeks of a training plan, just because there is going to come a point where we're a little bit more burnt out, we're a little bit more tired, and you're not going to be asking for anything more, but don't ask for too much early. So, this is also sort of just an accountability insight for me. I'm really excited right now and I want to do all the things, but I should not be doing workouts that are more appropriate for March, April, May, etc., because you want to be fresh for those when that time comes. And so for now, hold back, hold back, hold back, and avoid coming out of the gates way too hot because that will come back and bite you a little bit later in the season.
Yeah, I love this one. This one reminds me of well, first of all, patience. We always advocate that, and this one sort of hit home close to me because what happens is, what I find actually, particularly towards the end of the year, I started looking at the Strava review, and I started saying, okay, well, I set my goals at this number of bike miles and this number of swim and this number of run and data, and obviously this year was a little bit different for me anyway. But I still started to feel this pressure towards the end of the year, like, oh, if I just did a little bit more, I could like get this many miles, and would I feel really good about myself if I had this many more miles? And I start playing this game in my head sort of like Strava totals towards the end of the year. And I like want to like push hard at the end of the year. And then I realized like, hold on, time out. First of all, like don't play stupid games. Like a total means absolutely nothing. Total training hours means nothing. Total miles means absolutely nothing. And when January comes around, like you just said, like you kind of like go into January and really January, February, March are about preparing for the work, right? It's the basis we call about it. So it's just really patient. And so yes, a lot of workouts are going to feel like, I didn't really do much today, but like that's the whole point. Like January, February, March should feel a lot of that. And then like we're gonna get to the work. The work is coming.
Yeah, and we talked too about the idea of like going to the well. When things get really, really hard and you're in it, you should never even be flirting with the well in January. Like, don't even be thinking about the well. Don't be dancing around the well. The well is just not part of the training plan in the beginning. And I think it can feel like, oh, I've got to go there because this is what training's all about. So, anyway, this is something that having a coach can really, really help you with that accountability, and definitely trust them if they're saying, hey, we're going to ease back into things. But I can empathize. It's exciting. And we don't want to like quash that either. It's a big deal. It's exciting. And I think once we all get into the groove, that'll feel a little bit easier.
Yeah, I always feel like it's, we live in this microwave society. And it's like, okay, but training is really like this, like it's like a really good stew, and the good stew, it really benefits from this like slow, long duration cooking. So I'm always thinking like, okay, I want to create like a really tasty stew. And if I put something in the microwave, it doesn't taste that good. But if I put something on the stove all day long, like, oh, that's going to taste so good. So anyway, I think of training a little bit like a stew.
Yeah, and I think that we could maybe change the Endurance Drive platform to just be called Crockpot LLC because that's what we're all about. um,
Either emphasis on the crock or the pot.
Speaking of crock pots, my next insight is that be aware that as your volume goes up, your fueling needs are going to go up. And so I find that if you're not actively being intentional about your daily fueling as we start to pile on that volume and intensity, you do risk kind of ending up in a deficit. And it often is a pretty big shift from like if you're doing maybe a couple workouts a week to you're exercising twice a day in the base season, you can really have a huge amount of output. So not this time of year. We don't want to be close to the edge. We especially don't want to be close to the edge when we're starting out. So just make sure to fuel the work. And we would say it's a great time to check in with a registered dietitian if you don't know how to do that. One other thing that I've talked to some athletes about is a lot of people have sort of shifted some of their goals to be a little bit more focused on like body comp in the off season, so weight loss, et cetera. Those goals are often not sustainable when you shift gears to focus on performance, which is what we're doing now. So just think about the mindset shift too. Like there's a time and a place for different things for different people. Right now, it's not that time. And so everyone should sort of just be updating their fueling accordingly, both within workouts, especially kind of anything over 75 minutes, you want to be taking in fuel during, and just your daily fueling. You're just going to need more kind of throughout the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, et cetera.
Yeah, I love this. I just came in from like a 2 hour ski, as we talked about before. Skiing tends to be this sort of up tempo, very sort of hardworking. And so I went out to the ski course and was like, okay, I'm gonna like be prepared. So I used my Morton 320 and it's actually 80 grams of carbs, and it goes down really, really easy. And I brought some Nature Bakery's fig bars, and I also brought another Martin bar. And I was like, I was totally prepared. And every time we stopped, I'm like chowing down or I'm drinking. And what's interesting is usually towards the end of a ski like that, I started to think about, oh my gosh, like I really want to get back to the car, and the last few miles are like, oh, this kind of hurts. And what I found today was I just physically felt great the whole time. I had really even energy because I was fueling the whole time. But I think also like mentally, I was just more engaged. And I was thinking more about that. Like, yes, physically we needed fuel, but mentally, like it's so good to finish like a tempo or hard workout. Like for me, like mentally engaged in mental clarity, because then I'm more willing to like go back and do tempo, threshold, or any kind of hard work later if I end a hard workout with a good mental state.
Totally. And I think maybe something that people haven't totally realized is that fueling well actually does fuel that good mental state. We think about it as just like providing better physical output, for example, but there's actually some really interesting science on how you're kind of shutting off those brain signals that are like, stop, stop, stop. I don't want to do this anymore when it's really hard if you're just consistently giving it those carbs. So it's kind of cool. It feels like a hack in the sense that it's like, oh, do I have to like go up on the mountain and be very introspective in order to win the mental game? It's like, no, you just have to eat a fig bar and then you're going to be great. And it's awesome. So I don't know. I like the idea that that's maybe an easier way to have these big kind of mental unlocks is just like start with fueling enough. And then we can kind of work the edge of, okay, we're going to ground in our intentions, et cetera. But it's actually kind of simple.
Mhm. Yeah, it does feel like magic. I just, just feel like, oh, I just have to eat more and drink more. Like, wow, it's like simple but not easy. But it's amazing when you do it. It's like, wow, this works, and it like works like almost every time. Like, okay, well, I'm just gonna
Mhm.
keep doing this.
Yeah, and I find too, especially this is a little bit tangent, but some athletes will ask me at this time of year where no, we're not doing anything like 6 hour rides. They're like, well, do I really have to fuel in these like 75-minute, 90-minute rides? And I'm like, you won't die if you don't do it, but do you want to optimize your performance and make it a lot easier once we get into the 2 hour rides, the 3 hour rides? Like just take each one of these as an opportunity to really, really know your routine. And so you're not like introducing 8 new variables by the time we get outside. So my answer is you don't have to, but you really probably should if you want to get better. And generally, we're kind of all optimizing for performance here. So eat your fig bars.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as you know, like I have like I call that the email jihad. Like I do not accept any junk mail in my inbox, but I am accepting emails from the feed. We're not sponsored by the feed at all. But what I'm doing it is that because they have all these sales all the time, all these products, right? And so I've actually been stockpiling because one is because I know I'm going to use it in the summertime, but two, I want to use it now. I want to start testing now. So now's a great time to start fueling those 75-minute, runs or bikes. And number three is that the feed just takes like 2 weeks to get here. So like sometimes when the feed box shows up, I'm like, I don't even remember what I ordered because it's been so long. And we're also spoiled by Amazon. Like I click the button on my phone and like 2 days later or a day later, somebody shows up. I'm like, oh, there it is. Like I didn't forget about it. But with the feed, yeah, like I can see they're probably just trying to save on shipping and stuff. So it takes a while. So anyway, it's a good, just practical tip of like, just start stockpiling and just start using this stuff now.
And number three, you'll be ready for Armageddon when it happens because you're going to have a million fig bars and you can just retreat into your bunker with your pancake. It's going to be awesome.
I just want to know what Bruce Clayton has in his bunker. So,
A lot of fig bars.
right? Yeah. How
Yeah.
many mashed potatoes, number 10 cans of green beans? Like, just give us a count. Yeah.
All right, last insight for me. This is called We Are at the Time of Year Where Weather Will Present Challenges in Training. It's a long title, but it's very true. So, just for a couple of case studies here, I've run 10-ish miles the last couple weekends. Last weekend, I was up in Vermont. It was 14 degrees with a real feel of 8. There was snow all over the roads. It was really windy, kind of brutal. Earlier today, I did 10 miles in like high 30s and pouring rain. And both of those left me borderline hypothermic, like 5 to 10 minutes after finishing. And I would say made the runs a little bit harder than they would have been in like a 50-degree day and sunny. Again, I think I'm pretty good at having the right type of gear, but at a certain point in New England, you're going to hit these extreme conditions that will make things really hard. So just some action items for thinking about that. Make sure to have a plan for post run or post workout that helps take care of your body. So, dry clothes almost immediately, go straight into that hot shower. Hot food or drink actually really helps. I find that. So, we've done before, like you can do a hot protein shake or something like that. If you take down something cold, it can often just keep you a little chilly. And then I think also from a mental standpoint, it's pretty important to modify your expectations when the weather is going to present some big challenges. So, very cold weather, I found, just like very hot weather, as well as rain, wind, cold, snowy roads, etc., ice will make training harder. So that's going to make your heart rate go up because your body's just working a lot harder to maintain homeostasis. And just tell yourself, like, look, the main thing here is getting outside. I am building a resilience data point, which we've talked about before. And no, my pace and my heart rate probably are not going to be perfect, but I'm getting some durability. And then sometimes, too, if the intention of the workout is more, I really need to nail this, that's when you might want to either shift your days around to get outside on a better day, or maybe you hit the treadmill just because it's not worth it to do something super icy. Last thing here is just be gentle with yourself and use less data as needed. I find people can just get so frustrated, myself included, because they're just really mad at the weather and mad at the way that their pace places are going and stuff. But just know that it's the base season. Nothing really, really matters besides just getting out there and doing a little bit of the work. So good luck. We are hoping for a mild-ish winter. We probably won't have one. It's been sort of all over the place so far, but there will be more challenges to come probably in the next like 16 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought this one up because I'm feeling this one. And I think, most of our athletes are sort of New England or Northern athletes. And yeah, it's been hard out there. It's been some pretty cold days, like you've talked about. And actually, it's funny. We were doing the Union Village Dam Loop. Katie, you're familiar with this. So the first mile is sort of uphill. And so it's always a little bit slow. It's fine warming up. But then the next mile and a half are downhill. And that's always where my best run splits are. So I always look forward to that. The other day, I'm running down there and running downhill, and I look at my watch goes off the mile, and I look down at my pace. And I'm like, oh wow, that is like really slow. But then I look down, I'm like, okay, I'm wearing like 2 coats and like a neck gaiter and a headband and gloves and tights and on like long stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is just a blue collar like stack the brick day, and, and it's really cold out here. And yeah, it's like you talk about like it's just this mental shift from being like, oh, I expect a really good split here to being like, oh, my job is just to get to get around this loop. It doesn't matter if I walk it in a bit. It doesn't matter what pace I do it at. It's like I am outside. That is the win. I am going for a run. That is the win. Pace, none of that just matters. And I also have this crazy theory that there's sort of this like slight resistance training that's going on with all these clothes on. So I feel like when the time comes, whether that's next week or 3 months from now, we take all these clothes off, like we're just going to feel like stronger and faster because we are going to be stronger and faster because we get all this stuff off our body.
Oh, totally. It's funny. I was thinking about this exact thing today on my very rainy run because I was wearing like a light wool long sleeve shirt and then I was wearing the Patagonia Houdini jacket, which we've raved about. The one circumstance in which the Patagonia Houdini is not good is in the pouring rain because it just like takes all the water on from the sky and sticks to you. And I think by the end of this run, I was probably carrying like 5 pounds of water just in my clothing. And I was like, this is kind of some extra resistance training. Like, this is kind of cool. I might as well like have those little weights that people run with, but instead I could just hold it in my clothes. The hypothermia piece was not great, but know that once you're out there with just shorts and a t-shirt in like April, May, you're going to feel amazing. Then it will get brutal again, June, July, August, and then it'll be awesome in September and October. So just know there's a lot of adversity. There will be some months that it's awesome. Right now, just get the miles in, build that base, and you'll be set up for later in the season.
Yeah, great point. No, I like your saying about it's very similar. This very cold is very similar to the very hot. Like you're right, there's other challenges, but it does feel very similar. So I'm really glad you made that comparison.
And I'm curious too. I mean, just one more point on this is like thinking about what it would be like to just stand outside. If it's 14 degrees with a real feel of 8, within 5 minutes, you would be absolutely frozen. And if you think about yourself out there for like 90 minutes, that's a really brutal thing for your body to go through. So just make sure to take care of yourself in those contexts. And especially too, it's really hard to prioritize like good fueling and good hydration when you can't really feel your hands and stuff like that. So sometimes it just means being creative and thinking about when those really long things are going to happen. But I know at least for me, I might err towards kind of shifting my days around with the calendar to the extent that I can. Sometimes doing a long run midweek because it's a little bit warmer might be a good call.
Yeah, I find that, the difference between 20 degrees and 10 degrees, like there's only 10 degrees, but it's such a huge difference. And so if you can shift around and say this day is going to be 30 versus the next day is going to be 18, like that's a huge difference.
Definitely. And I know we have a lot of early morning runners where it's like the best you're going to get is 18. That's tough too. So we will take recs. We're not really the early morning runner type, Jim, you and me. But if anyone knows how to dress for that type of thing, we will take those recommendations and we will share them on a future podcast. Looking at you, Laura Faye, Katie Barnes, all of our crew.
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah. One of our principles, we can't run before noon.
Exactly. All right, Jim, on to you, coaching and training insights.
Okay, wow. Well, I got some big ones here, so I'll try to be brief. But I've been sort of circling around this warm up. So it's called RPR, which is Reflexive Performance Reset. And I came across this a couple years ago from this coach, Cal Dietz, and I put a link in here. Cal is the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Minnesota, and he is not the person who created RPR, but he is a big advocate of that. And so I'm like, okay, I got to dig deeper into this during the holidays when I have more time. So I dug more into it, and it's really quick and easy to do. But RPR is basically a system of breathing and tactile input to reset your body. So the setup here is that your body has basically 2 priorities: to breathe and to move. And so to perform at the best, we need to do both of those properly. So in this world of constant stress, what tends to happen is our bodies get these, finds ways to meet those priorities, but we often do them in a very weird and compensatory way. So we're just like sitting and it's like, life is happening, right? And so we still need to do these things, and our bodies sometimes do things that probably shouldn't do. So the main source of sort of non-contact injuries are these compensation patterns that we develop from the stress. And so using RPR, this wake up drills, you can like they shift your body like out of these patterns and help reduce pain and increase flexibility. And really for me, it's just like turn muscles on that need to be turned on. So I'm thinking about this more from an athletic standpoint. But what's really cool about RPR is that, again, it takes like 1 or 2 minutes to do, and you can reset your body. And what I'm finding is that, I have very much a gimp still from my leg injury, my hip injury. I still have a lot of swelling in here. So in order for me to be an effective runner, I have to really turn on my glutes, and I also have to turn on my feet and my arches. It really also helps to turn on my psoas as well too. So I put a link in here. You'll see Cal actually taking through some weightlifters through this warm-up routine, and he goes through the breathing patterns, which are really, really quick, just waking up the diaphragm, psoas, glutes, quads, and hips. And then in another video, he goes through the foot and the arch, and I put a link to that video as well too. So those are the ones that I focus on before going out the door. So if this is an inside warm up, and again, really, really super, super quick. This is very, very easy to learn too. And you probably, once you see some of these exercises, you'll be like, oh, I've done that before. And so I think it'd be interesting to hear from listeners if you do this, and how do you feel? I always feel lighter. I feel more activated, and I also just get goosebumps. So it's just really, really cool. So anyway, I just feel like this is a really large return on my investment, and I'm just seeing great results because, again, I walk around the house, I'm limping, I'm gimping around, I do RPR, and suddenly like I'm walking straight, and then I go out the door and I go for my run.
That's awesome. And I love that it's just 1 to 2 minutes. Like, I sometimes my brain just turns off if someone's like, here's my 45-minute routine for whatever it is. But 1 to 2, we can definitely fit that in. Even if it's the challenge of the week, try it out. I will definitely be checking out these videos.
That will probably be my challenge of the week, believe it or not. Yes, this is what's called foreshadowing in podcasting, right?
Exactly.
Okay, my second one here, it also comes from Cal Dietz. As you can tell, I've done a big triphasic Cal Dietz deep dive over the holidays. But I've added this, what's called the spring ankle exercises from Cal Dietz, and I put a link to a larger document. And you're probably very familiar if you see these. It's basically holding your ankles and your foot in a particular shank angle, if you will. So really easy to learn. But what's cool about this is that your foot strength, your arch strength is really super important. It's really important for running and for maybe other sports as well too. So check these out. I think you'll really like them as well. Again, I just been incorporating them in my regular strength routine, and I'm already starting to feel a difference with like stronger feet, and I'm just getting more awareness of my foot and this hip extension. And I've mentioned, Lawrence Van Lingam a number of times, and he's really about hip extension, and Cal has been talking about hip extension. So I always find it very interesting. And part of the reason why I went down this rabbit hole was that Cal Dietz is he's a college, strength and conditioning coach. And then you've sort of got Lawrence Van Lingam, who definitely is more this sort of holistic type person, but they're all sort of talking about the same exact thing. They're coming about it from a little bit different perspective, but at the end of the day, they're talking about hip extension and fluidity and coordinated efforts. And I'm like, okay, when two people that I really respect who are coming from very different places are talking about the same thing, like I start to pay attention.
I love this. My brain lit up a little bit because I've still got, I've had this ankle injury in the past that luckily is doing pretty much completely fine, but that ankle is now weaker than the other one and it's more apt to roll a little bit. So I'm always looking for new exercises, and I'm going to check this out. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. And my last one here is I just put a link in. If you guys, we've mentioned Steve Magnus multiple times. So Steve has a great YouTube. He's been putting more stuff on YouTube recently. The title of the video is Sprint Training, the Missing Piece in Your Endurance Program. And again, you guys know that we're very big on strides and pickups for long distance athletes, but Steve just goes into a good explanation of why this is key. And the key thing is you want to train both your slow and your fast twitch muscles. So when you get tired, when you get muscle fatigue, you can eventually use all of your muscles. So especially for our long distance athletes, it's super important to be able to engage your fast twitch muscles sometimes, because those are also going to switch on, maybe at 90 minutes into your run or 2 hours into your run, whatnot. So anyway, just a very interesting video. Check it out. This is also why we do like fast 25s in our swim program. We do a lot of sprinting, even when it's a zone 2 workout as well too. So the key principle here is like the absolute power is the key driver of adaptation. So that's what we always talk about when you do something like a max hill sprint or like a really fast 25s or, fast 100s or fast 200s on the track. Like take plenty of time, because really what we're trying to do is you're trying to bring all your muscles and everything to bear on that one rep. And if it means you have to sit around for 3 minutes or walk around for 3 minutes afterwards, that's fine too, because the point is that you need to bring the most absolute power. That is the key driver to adapting your body.
I love this. And this reminds me actually, so I've been doing my tech swims that I talk about a lot. I do like a Monday tech recovery swim, and sometimes I'll do another tech swim during the week. But something new I've added to all my tech swims is just 4x25s all out at the very end. And it's so short. I mean, these things take like what, 15 seconds to get across the pool. But I do think that it's creating this adaptation where once later in the season, maybe I start to do some actual big girl swim sets. It's not going to be that big of a transition to get there because I'm getting all the technique work in, I'm getting the body position, and then I have that little bit of power. So think about doing that. And I think the nice thing too about 4 fast 25s or like 4 hill strides at the end of your run or 4 stride, whatever that is that it doesn't really fatigue you much. Like that does not count
Yeah.
like a huge workout where you're going to be gassed the next day. So you can kind of add it in whenever, especially if you're taking enough rest. It's a different story if you're taking like you're doing 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off for 10 minutes. That's a huge workout. That's really, really challenging. But 4x20 seconds of something fast in a swim or a bike and a run, that's not going to do anything to your overall fatigue. And yet you're still pushing that up, Bren. So I just love that you brought this up.
Yeah, great. And my last one, I do have one more. So we often talk about here that there's like no magic formula during the base season. You can just switch things around. I always tell my athletes like all the workouts are Scrabble tiles and you can move them anywhere you want in the week. And we just talked about the weather, moving things around for the weather. But I will say, and I'm sort of going to advocate here that for a number of my athletes this year, and maybe this is fits for you, other folks out there, is that this year we're doing a lot of big focus on run speed development for triathletes and for my runners. So as such, really advocating is that most folks try to do their hard run, their long run on Saturday, and then bike on tired legs on Sunday. So again, we always say, oh, there's no magic formula. But if we really have just identified run speed development as a priority this year, as a limiter this year, we want to work on that, then really consider your big rock. We've talked about this, but big rock during the day, but this is the big rock during the week. Put that first in your weekend and then do your other stuff.
Yeah, I love this. And then I think something too to think about is that maybe this will kind of shift over the course of the season. So right now, if we're working on run speed, it's like let's make that the Saturday thing. If you're training for an Ironman, there is a time and a place where the 6-hour ride is going to be the big rock of an entire week period. So we can just think about kind of being flexible about that. But if the big rock is running, then absolutely do it on a Saturday and do it first. And I've been thinking too about how biking is a really nice way to kind of build the aerobic base part of running. So even if you're training for like a run race, for example, getting some of that good Z1-2 type stuff in on the bike is fantastic. And it's okay to do that on tired legs.
Mm.
And you can even mix in a couple of these sprints that we've talked about, which are not going to be too challenging to kind of still hit that high end fast twitch. But saving your intensity for the run, especially on like a long run Saturday, is a great idea.
Have we arrived at main content?
We have arrived at main content. So it's an exciting moment when we get there. So this was fun to put together. I think we have 10 principles that we're going to talk about. And this is us going rogue in the sense that we didn't really add notes below them. We're just going to riff a little bit on what these principles are. But luckily, we've probably talked about each and every one of them kind of on some podcast or another at some point, to the point where I think we're in good shape. So I don't know, Jim, do you think we can handle this?
I don't know. I mean, some of these do look new to me. I've never seen them before, so I don't know.
What's 80-20? What?
Yeah, what's 80-20? Yeah. Actually, if you guys can look this up and actually get back to us, our email is, we'll get...
Yeah, exactly. info@theendurancedrive.com.
Right, exactly right.
All right. Well, let's talk about the first one. This is an important one. This is very high up on our website, and this was something that you wrote in our coaching philosophy, Jim. Tell us what it means when we say you are a person first, athlete second.
Well, I think our podcast, if you listen to whatever, 60 hours or whatever it is that we put out, or more in 2024, I think you'll find out that we went far and wide on many topics on this podcast. And why is that? Because performance is holistic, right? And you are a person. So, performance does not stand off on its own. Like workouts do not stand off on their own. We are not siloed creatures. We are integrated, holistic people. And so really, we started the Endurance Drive by, there's some coaching platforms that are out there that are just like, yeah, we're about performance. And that's okay too. If that's what you're into, like, that's awesome. But for us, we sort of felt like it was a better approach to say, let's think of the person first and then the athlete second.
Yeah, and I think we think about that a lot in the way that we design training plans is like we never have a one size fits all and there is never a rigid one way to do it. We are super into that kind of like dynamic and flexible way to think about training that integrates training with your life and the things that make you uniquely you, like your values and what gets you excited and what you want to be doing because you're a person first. And then if there's like stuff going on in your life that's making it challenging, that's going to come first and the workouts are going to respond to that. So I just find that this is interesting because, we talk about, yeah, there are coaches out there who are all about like performance, but I find that the person first approach actually can get some of the very best performances because the performance only approach, like maybe it's like you get one or two good races out of that, but that almost always leads to burnout because it's separate from your life. If you're a professional, maybe it's a different story, but we don't really coach professionals and that's not our focus. So if we can just start with like the understanding that all of us are humans, I think we can actually do some really magical things with the way that we perform. And it's worked so far. So people should probably stick around with that.
Yeah, I think so. No, I totally agree, right? Like, yeah, it's this short-term versus long-term gains and get back to like the stew versus the microwave, right? Like we are definitely about the stew here. And I think that's really what this person first is that, yeah. And you say we do get incredible results here. And really we're trying to do is like you as an individual have a very, what I say in Taken, I have a very special set of skills, but it's true, you do, right? And so we need to take all that into account. And yeah, what is your life situation? What's your job like? What's your family situation like? How much time do you have? Whatever. What's your stress level like? We talk about LSS. All these things come into play in creating this stew. And so we need to take account for all that stuff and then say, okay, because the workouts, I mean, the workouts are easy. That's the easy part in some ways, right? It's like, I think the workouts are like, 40% of it, right? And then 60% is like, okay, all the other stuff in our lives that we have to deal with. And so workouts do not set out separately at all from your life. They are fully integrated.
Yeah, and I think I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's kind of what makes coaching so cool is like, yeah, we're sort of there to provide workouts and that's our maybe number one-ish job, but we end up just intersecting with like the people aspect of people's lives and trying to work with humans and work through really tough things and really exciting things and highs and lows and emotions. And none of this exists in a silo. Maybe that's another way to say this is that the workouts don't exist in a silo and the life stuff doesn't exist in a silo. And your friends and your family and your values and your purpose and your races, nothing is siloed. It's all kind of messy and all together. And we talk about this too. Athletics is a lens through which you can become a better person and a better partner and a better friend and a better employee at your job, all that stuff. So I don't know, we land ourselves in this cool thing that we get to do when we actually treat people like people first and athletes second. But it's been fun. So I would say we're not gonna change on this one. This is why this was number one, because I think this is maybe our guiding principle of the endurance drive.
Right, we might change the second one, which is 80-20 distribution. We might go 70-30 or 90-10, but we're definitely not going to change this one. So,
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue. So generally, we say that we follow like an 80-20 intensity distribution in the way that we program most of our plans. Because again, the programming actually is kind of important. We do some of that. So Jim, what is 80-20 for anyone who has been living under a rock or has never come to the podcast?
right, if you've ever heard of 80-20, let us know. We'll send you a swim cap as well. So, but really, this sort of this zone 2 aerobic development that we talk about. And time and time again, 80-20 has been developed over time by really humans figure it out. Humans are very, very clever. We start there, right? And so as endurance athletes, whether that's runners, cyclists, skiers, whatever it may be, whatever endurance sport you may have, humans figured out that if we do about 80% of our training at a pretty easy aerobic pace, and then about 20% we mix in, whatever. You mix in some medium, you mix in some zone 3, you mix in some zone 4, whatever zones you use and terminology you want to use at 20. But basically, the majority of your work is easy, and then there's some hard intensity, and most that's usually focused around like, race-specific demands. And so this is what every sport has figured out. Humans figured it out. And then it's funny because then sports scientists come along in the background and they go, oh yeah, by the way, they validate this. And I had a chuckle the other day because there was I think it's in a meta study when they look at all kinds of studies, is that the
Yeah, meta-analysis, yep.
big meta-analysis of all the, like, I think it was maybe Boston Marathon or something, but the result was that the runners who ran more and easy, they had better marathon times across, like, I feel like tens
Wow.
of thousands of them. I was like, yes, one more recent sports science saying, if you run it easy and you run a lot, like, turns out you get faster at the marathons. Like, wow, okay, what a finding, So anyway, humans are clever. We figured this out. So we're sticking with it because it always works. Because the great part of being coached is we get to see this work like all the time, which is just so cool.
Totally. And I think sometimes when we get new athletes, the reason we're bringing this up is that some people don't necessarily buy into this because they love to sort of be in that zone 3, which actually does fall in the 20%. almost 100% of the time because you can. It's not like zone 5 VO2 max type stuff where you can't actually do that all the time. You can sort of fake it in zone 3, but you just won't get better. And so the reason that we recommend this is not because we want to punish you, not because we want you to walk on the track. It's because we want you to get faster if that's your goal. And so we've seen this work over and over again. And I would say too, like the broader principle is here is that that easy stuff is something that you can actually really enjoy. It's something that actually is really fun. It's actually something that once you get good at it or once it gets sustainable, it becomes kind of people's favorite zone. Almost to the point, like for me, where I get scared whenever I have to go outside of that 80. I do it, but it's a little bit different. So I don't know. I cannot sing the praises of 80/20 enough. And if you're new, trust the process. It'll be difficult for a little while, but listen to our Zone 2 podcast episode and you will get there.
Yeah, I love this one too because it's just a physiological fact and it's not a philosophy, which is really cool. So I always like to feel like I don't have to convince you, but just because it's a physiological fact, this is what happens. Humans develop the most mitochondria when we do these low level aerobic work. That's the best way to build mitochondria, which really is like the powerhouse of our cells.
The powerhouse of the cell.
The powerhouse of the cells, right? So it's so funny to me. It's like, so it's not even a philosophy. It's just like, this is what people figured out a long time ago. We stick with it. It's just a physiological fact. Like, and it's just cool to sort of make this like number 2 in our, I guess, in our principles, because it's nice to sort of ground nowadays in facts.
Yeah, and honestly, maybe the principle here is that we use facts. Like that's generally how we approach things. We like facts as a general statement. We also like woo spirituality, but fact is generally a good place to start.
I also have a lot of theories I put in these podcasts as well too. Like if you put a lot of clothes on, you're getting resistance training. So yeah, you probably hear a lot of that too. So anyway, but most of the time we try to stick to somewhat of the facts.
Would you say 80% fact, 20% theory is probably what we're doing?
Exactly.
Awesome. That's the principle. Okay. Next one here. This comes up a lot, calling it honor the intention of the workout. And this was an insight that like came up, I think, sometime last in the spring, but it's become really relevant. We talk about it a lot right now. And the idea behind this is that you're not going to do every single workout perfectly. What we care about as coaches is that you're just honoring what the intention of any given workout is. So, for example, if you're out and you're trying to go for a run and you don't like the pace that you're seeing, your heart rate's really high and it's just not going well. Well, if the intention of the workout is just to be in zone 2, you shouldn't be worrying about pace at all. You could just go out and say, I'm going to spend 45 minutes in zone 2, and that's going to be what I do today. And similarly, if it's like a really hard workout, it doesn't need to be perfect. If the interval ends up being 12 minutes instead of 10 minutes or it's 8 minutes, something like that, the intention is just to spend some time in roughly that type of interval zone. And so I think we say this a lot because people can often get a little bit of tunnel vision and not really see the forest for the trees, where they're so focused on nailing something perfectly. But we just want to see you nail that intention. And we're always there to kind of answer the question of what is the intention of this workout. And sometimes that's also a good way to be able to kind of help people think about when to modify. Like if you're having a really, really tough time, the intention of the workout might just be stress relief. And that can mean yoga, or it can mean a walk, or it can mean going out for your run and seeing how it feels. So just come back to that intention. It's always good to let intentions kind of guide how you approach anything in life, but especially training. And the intention of the workout is the key driving force in kind of any thought process behind any workouts that we do.
Yeah, that was one. And this was a big one that I personally took away a lot in 2024. And it's actually interesting. So yesterday I started doing some structured Zwift training. Well, actually, I've been doing Training Peaks virtual, which I'll talk about another time, another podcast. But anyway, in the past, so yesterday I did 15 by 1 minute tempo, which is a standard one that we do a lot here. And so I've had a big trainer, Epic. We're trying to get my smart trainer connected to Zwift or Training Peaks virtual, blah, blah. Anyway, it turns out I could connect it via Bluetooth. Who knew? But anyway, yesterday I'm doing the workout and there's a little bit of a lag with the resistance with Bluetooth. And I was just thinking yesterday, like, man, I would have lost my shit a bunch of years ago for a bunch of years. But like when I'm supposed to be pushing, 215 watts at this point, at second one, I should be at 215. And it was taking some time and it was sort of cranking up. And I looked down like, well, it's been 10, 15 seconds till I really get back at target. And again, I would have lost my squash in multiple years. And then I realized I was like, wait a minute, like I'm just trying to do around 1 minute at like a tempo. Oh, what is tempo? Tempo is like a very wide range anyway. We call it like 76% to 90% of your FTP. So it's a really wide range. And I also know like when it goes to the recovery part, like I'm still gonna be pushing some watts. And I'm just like, this is all good. But I just sort of like had that Zen moment of like, what's the intention of the workout? The intention of the workout is I'm gonna do roughly 15 minutes of work in this workout, somewhere in the tempo range. And I'm just actually really thankful that my trainer is actually connected to something now. And so this one has really, really helped me a lot this year.
Yeah, and even like if I were coaching you in that moment, I also would have said, "Hey, the intention of this workout is to just have one structured workout that actually works, like to connect to Bluetooth. And let's start with that. And let's see
Mhm.
what happens after that. And then next time it can be to nail those intervals a little bit more directly." But that's such a great example. And again, I think it's important because this can actually help fight some of that emotionality that comes into like, I'm so frustrated. We've all been there where you're frustrated at your pace or you're frustrated at the trainer or you're frustrated at your heart rate, and then just ask yourself, like, okay, what is the intention? And maybe that can help you feel like you're actually doing something right. I think we sometimes get frustrated because it feels like we're doing something wrong or we're not doing what we're supposed to do. But you'll find that the intention is a lot wider and more flexible than 15 by 1 tempo or whatever that is says it's supposed to be. And again, this is all supposed to be fun. We'll get to this a little bit later, like keep the recreation recreational athlete. But I think that can help us all just take a little bit of perspective when we just feel that frustration about something not being perfect.
Yeah, well, let's jump ahead one and talk about that. Yeah, the
Okay.
recreation. We talk about that all the time, right? We always talk about, joy, health, and community, right? And I said, I feel like this is this larger intention of the workout. There's like the workout itself, but then there's like this other intention of like, hey, this should be healthy, this should be fun, there should be play, there should be joy. Do things with other people, like that kind of thing. So I think it's really important to as adults, we have very few opportunities to play like kids, and we just lose that somewhere along the way. Life gets pretty serious. We got our jobs and family, this and that. And so we always advocate like go like join a master's team or go join a run group, go play like, and again, like if the intention of the workout is to like run some tempo or do whatever, or even if you went to a group of friends and you guys all ran fast because it was just yucking it up and you were supposed to do a zone 2 run, who cares? You had joy, you had happy, it was community. So it's like, yes, keep the recreation and recreational athlete.
Yeah, and importantly too, like none of the athletes that we coach right now are professional athletes. So you are not getting paid to do this and you are doing this because it's your hobby. I think I remember a long podcast ago, one of my athletes always says something like, "We are all regular everyday citizens," or something like
Yes.
that. It's just like we're just people. We're just doing this and this is fun. And it's funny because if you kind of zoom out, especially when things are feeling really stressful with like my big A race and I want to crush all my goals, it's like this is all made up. Like, this is just a silly thing that we've all decided to put some meaning in, and it's important for sure, but at the end of the day, it is something that we do for fun. We talk about too, like running a marathon. Why is it 26.2 miles? It could have been 27.8 miles or 24.1 miles. It's just this silly random thing. And, if you take that perspective on everything, then you don't really have meaning in life at all. So it's important to do that. But the meaning of what we're doing as recreational athletes is some level of recreation, and you can take that in a lot of different directions. But I would just encourage people to try to not get tunnel vision once you get really, really into that training. I think people can often get in the point where they don't want to do anything social because it might not be perfect, or, their heart rate might be 145 instead of 138 on their zone 2 run. If they're talking to someone, whatever that is okay. And flex that muscle and you will probably have a good time. And similarly, if you're not having a good time in your training, put some play in there, put some fun in there, call a friend, do a Strava segment, do a local 5K because it's silly and fun. But I find that if you let the recreation fall out of recreational athlete, you just get burnout, which is something that we're definitely trying to avoid for a fun, silly hobby that we all do.
And I think ironically, I look across like all the athletes that I've known and sort of the top performers. I think one of the most common characteristics among the top performers in the amateur world has been these folks do a lot of play, and they often do a lot of play with their friends, and they're out running around in the mountains, they're out skiing all day, and they're just doing stuff you look at it going, is that training? Like, what? How come they're not at home like doing the 15 by 1 tempo? And they're just out yucking about doing stuff with their friends. And oftentimes, like those are the people who are coming in first in there. And I thought, that's there's a real lesson there. So I feel like for many, many years, and I was caught in this thing many years, I was like, I gotta do the plan exactly as it is. And I'd get so worked up about it. And when I sort of finally sort of took my hands off the wheels a little bit here and Jesus take over, but just to let up and to relax a little bit and bring more play into it. And I think my performance just really, really went up when I decided, like you said, we're making these things up, we're putting significance on these workouts, right? This is the thing. And it's like, no, it's not the thing. The thing might just be like a lot of play and a lot of joy and a lot of community.
Definitely. I love this one. All right, next one here. Stress plus rest equals growth. This principle is all about not the stress piece necessarily, but about the rest piece. And I think to distill it, we'll just say that yes, you need to do the training for growth, but in equal measure, you need to do the recovery because otherwise you won't get the growth. And this one's cool because it's also just a fact, right? Like this is not woo-woo
Exactly.
spirituality. This is just like if you put stress on, the adaptations happen actually while you are resting and recovering, not while you're piling on stress. So if if you don't let that rest and recovery happening, then you might as well not do the stress piece. And I think actually so many more people are guilty of this. People who train hard 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, they're going to plateau or they're going to get injured or maybe both. Whereas if you can just take those easy days, again, it can take a lot of different forms. I know recovery is challenging. I know we all love to push really, really hard, but as coaches, our biggest job is usually to hold people back just a little bit. So keep that in mind that if you want the adaptations, you have to give your body time to absorb the stress that you've put it under.
Yeah, I think when I first started triathlon, of course, I was all focused on, the stress part of it. And then I got a chance to hang around with some of the professional triathletes. And one of the first thing that struck me was like how well they recovered. Or, I'd say, hey, we're going to do this workout. You want to jump in the pool with me and do this? And like, nope. Today's my recovery day. I'm like, you really don't want to get in the pool like right now? I was like, no, I'm going to sit on the side of the pool and watch you do this. And I was like, wow, you guys like recover hard. Like you like take it seriously. And I always felt like it just takes courage. I mean, I didn't have the courage for many, many years to like do the actual recovery. Like I was good at the stress. Like we're all really good at the stress. Like these type A, ultra runners, triathletes, like we can do stress. We know that very well. But to step back and go on the couch or say, just take a couple of days off or like take a week off. Like we talked about the holidays, like it's the holidays, take some time off. And guess what? When you come back, you're going to be faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could probably also file this under the idea of like simple but not easy. It's like at the end of the day, the things that will probably enhance your adaptations the most are good food and good rest. And nobody wants to do that. That doesn't sell. It's not something that it's exciting to just like eat a fig bar, get in a blanket burrito, and lay on the couch for the rest of the day. But that's actually an amazing way to get really, really fast. So just challenge people to do that. And I mean, I think from the professional perspective, they do it because they've seen it work, right? So just flex the muscle and give it a try. And we've probably all had in our lives like those unplanned rest days where something happens in your life and you end up with a day off, or you get sick and you take 4 days off and then you come back and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing actually. Like, what was that? And it's because life said, no, you need to take a little rest right now. And then it absolutely revolutionizes your training. So be proactive about that if you can. That's a big challenge for this year. But we as coaches are definitely trying to get our athletes to do that because we just want them to be faster. And that's the best way to get there.
I love those stories about the athletes who are saying, it's very common. Like, I got sick a week before my race and I couldn't do anything. And as a coach now, I'm like, that's fantastic. Like, no, I didn't want to see you get sick, but like you just sitting on the couch for 5 days before the race, like oftentimes the outcomes are really good from that because you're shedding the acute fatigue, but you're also shedding some of that chronic fatigue as well too. And it's just like less is more like during that race week. But I'd say again, you hear so many stories like I got sick the week before and I did nothing. It's like, okay, perfect. Like, did you have a good race? Yeah, I had a great race. I'm like, yeah, you did.
I love it. That's awesome. All right, next one. This is related. I was just talking about nutrition, but we always say fueling and fitness are equal partners on race day. And then I put in parentheses and in training because this kind of goes throughout the training cycle. But here we say just like stress and rest need to go together. Fitness is only so much without the fueling. You have to fuel the fitness. And in order to express your fitness, you have to be fueling it really, really, really well. And I would say it's really frustrating when I see an athlete who absolutely has crushed everything related to the training. And then it's a nutrition issue on race day where they just like can't get the food down or they don't want to get the food down or whatever it is. They don't take in enough carbs. And I'm like, you had it. Like you were so close. This was the simple part. Again, it's not always easy, but like we say, practice it early, make it a part of your routine, just like those 1x1s on tempo, just like your warm up, your cool down. It just needs to be super, super important. And again, this is a fact, and this is probably the best way to unlock performance. We've talked a lot about how that high carb fueling is really a big focus for us in 2025 as coaches, as athletes. I'm increasingly convinced about how powerful it is. So everyone should probably be going into this season with that being a huge, huge focus for them. And again, it's something you can ask for help in. Call on the professionals. If you don't know how to do it, we as coaches can help a little bit, but registered dietitians are awesome. And I think that this is where we can actually see the biggest gains relative to, yes, training is going to help. You're going to get faster running, biking, swimming, etc. But this is one of those like flip the switch and you are faster immediately if you do it right.
Exactly right. And you mentioned a couple podcasts ago about 99% of this is really is the everyday nutrition, right? So really focus on that. That's going to be that should be your big rock, and right, the 1% is that fueling. But yeah, that's such an important 1%. And I think you're right. There's a reason why the Tour de France is getting faster and faster and faster every single year. There's a reason why all these ultra marathons are getting faster and faster every single year. The marathon's getting faster is because high carb fueling is there. It's proven. Again, it's one of these ones where humans have figured it out. They're very clever. And again, 5-10 years from now, Sports science is going to come along and say, oh yeah, by the way, high carb fueling, it's a really good thing. And it's hard too, because it's hard not to pick on sports scientists because we need them, but it's just hard to create an experiment where you say, hey, go run for 6 hours and then take in 120 grams of carbs, keep taking in it, and then run for another 6 hours. Like, I don't think they let you do that off in the lab.
That's a cool, I mean, I don't know, maybe I should bring that into my lab and be like, hey guys, can we do this? Can we get some listeners, podcast listeners? But no, you just look at the performances, look at who's winning and look at what their fueling is doing, and you will see that that's what people are doing.
Yeah.
This segues us actually quite nicely into this other principle about the importance of nailing the basics without getting too caught up in the 1%. And we've sort of alluded to this in a couple of our different principles so far. But at the end of the day, like sleep, nutrition, and consistent structured training are basically the 99% that is going to get you so high. And I think people get really caught up in like things that you can buy, like, oh, I'm going to get the headband with ice, or I'm going to get like this or that, and it's the ketones, and that's going to completely change everything for me. But again, the people that are doing that are really trying to get from 99 to 100%. They're at the professional level, and they are already nailing the sleep and the nutrition and the consistent and structured training. So I don't know that I've ever had an athlete where I'm like, wow, they would be so much better if we could just get them to wear an ice headband. Like, if we could cool effectively in a race, like, yeah, that would be awesome. But that lives within the 99%. So focus on the basics first. And then we will let you know as coaches if we're like, okay, I think we're at the point, you're a level 5 athlete where we've got to pull out all the stops here. But really everyone, including us, I would say, you and me, Jim, like we are just focused still on optimizing that sleep, nutrition, and consistent training. And that's going to get you the best results.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, like we're always talking about, gear of the week, pick of this, and I'm the first person to try anything. And that's one of the cool things actually about, I think, particularly about triathletes, like we'll just buy anything and try anything. And that's kind of cool, right? But it's just the fact that it's like, yeah, that's the 1% thing. And we need to focus on 99%. And, I think the way I look at it now is that if somebody's trying to sell me something, I often have to say, okay, that's a 1% thing. And maybe I will check it out just because it's fun and it'll be a cool thing to do, but just recognizing like this is just a 1% thing, and this is really just putting money in somebody's pocket's not really going to probably help me all that much.
Totally. And some of our gear picks, like things like clothes, I would probably put that in like the 99% some of the time because you want good clothes for your training or whatever. And if we have nutrition products on there, like, yeah, it's helping fuel everything, etc. But I would say some of the gear and gadgets, like we're putting that on because we're running out of ideas and it's kind of fun to think about. We'll let you know if it's actually going to revolutionize everything with respect to your training. Mostly it's just something fun to like ask your distant relative for who needs to get you something. And you're like, all right, I could use the hypervolt heat attachment. Like that'd be nice.
Yes, exactly right. Yes, my gear pick of the week it's just absolutely critical. You'll see it when we get there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm looking forward. That's awesome. All right. Next one. We have an episode all about this, but a little point here on injury prevention. I would say the guiding principle is 1 to 2 days off can prevent 1 to 2 months off. Sometimes that might be like 3 or 4 days can prevent 3 or 4 months. It's sort of hard to know exactly what the formula is, but the point is if you have something that doesn't feel right, say something early and shut down the workout that you're doing, because often we can sort of have like a crisis averted moment if we manage it early. This, you can also say, like, have that local network going. Anytime anything's a yellow flag, you should be having your PT check it out, going to a sports massage, going to whoever your care team looks like and letting your coach know. But we are just so about this proactive approach to injury prevention rather than letting something get really, really, really bad to the point where it totally sidelines you for a really long time. Again, this is for overuse injuries. If you crash your bike, 1 to 2 days off probably is not going to help too much. Just so you know, Jim.
Weird. Really? I thought I'd be fine after 2 days. It was strange. Once they let me out of the hospital, I was like, come on, I'm going. Let's go, guys.
I listened to the podcast. They said 1 to 2 days off.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's just a niggle.
But yes, the point is here, overuse injuries, we would like to avoid them at all costs. That's the point. They are overused. So just use a little less and you will be in better shape, hopefully for the next couple months.
This is a great reminder in January too, because a lot of folks are just starting the run program. This is really where injuries pop up, we think, the most. And like you said, tell your coach if something's happening. Achilles are something that I see a lot, or that seems to be one of the things that happens the most. And so if you have a sore Achilles as you're starting your run program, just tell us. It's critical. Tell us. We can do run walk. We can do we have so many different options to get you to go running. And it's January. We do not need to be running big miles or hard miles or run intervals in January. So I love this one. It's a really good reminder. Let's go gentle in January running. And if something pops up, just let us know.
I feel like that's a mantra. It's like gentle January. It's like people do like dry January. We're into gentle January.
Exactly.
All Okay, two more here. Number one, the magic of strength training. I mean, we've talked about strength so much on this podcast, but a couple points I want to make are number one, you should be doing it, and there's a way to periodize your strength training. So I am right now coming off a really big kind of general strength building block. It was awesome. I feel amazing. My first kind of endurance workouts of my structured plan have felt super good with all the strength that I've built. So there is something to it, but strength training is great for a ton of metabolic adaptations. It's great for just being faster, which is really cool. And then also for being durable and preventing injury. And then also, I think a big principle that we use, Jim, is that we actually incorporate strength into a lot of our sort of cardio endurance workouts. So whenever we do things like running hills, we are big into hills. We'll have people trail run a little bit. We've talked about doing like paddles and buoy in the pool. That's another very strength oriented workout for your upper body. And then low cadence on the bike. All three of those are ways to incorporate strength into your routine. So if you're someone that hates the gym, we still want you to try it out, but we will say that there are ways to kind of sneak it in throughout your week in general. And the more strength you do, to a point, you are going to be a better and more durable athlete for kind of anything in the endurance space.
And we think about this, we always talk about this pyramid of, I guess, of health. And, the first bottom layer of that pyramid is wellness. And what I love about strength training is it fits squarely in wellness. And then it also fits into sort of aerobic development, which is sort of the next layer up on the pyramid. So yeah, love strength training. It's just great for your life, right? If I had to get rid of all workouts in the world, like as much as I love all these sports, I would definitely always choose strength training because I know that it's going to benefit me from like when I get even older than what I am now.
Imagine that. Is that possible?
I know it's hard to imagine. It's hard to thought of the day. Yes.
Yep. All right, last one. I couldn't think of a good title in this. And actually, one title that came up was Don't Be an Indoor Cat. And what this means is that I would say a big principle for us is the importance of building outdoor durability. And so we've actually had a ton of time kind of in the mountains. We do a lot of hiking in the White Mountains, kind of the Green Mountains in New Hampshire. There are mountains in Maine. New England has good mountains. We love them. But spending time outside doing that is good on so many levels for becoming a better triathlete. I think getting accustomed to the elements is really important. I talked about how, yeah, you have to modify your expectations a lot when you do that. And if you've never been in the White Mountains, you need to be prepared that sometimes it can take you 45 minutes to go 1 mile. Like that's kind of what the terrain is like. But it's still building all of these skills that you cannot get if you're only on the trainer and only on the treadmill and only training inside. So we would just encourage people to get outside when you can, try to do some things that are outside of your comfort zone, especially in the off season. It's great to do that, but you can kind of fold it in anytime and make sure that you're someone who's not afraid of the outside because there will be elements and challenges when you go do your Ironman. And I found that sometimes the skills that I've picked up from long days in the mountains have been a lot more transferable than like the 3.5 hour ride I did on a trainer kind of getting ready for the race.
Yeah, you've heard us mention this before. It's like, especially if you're thinking about like an ultra run or an Ironman or even some kind of long distance endurance event, literally just go outside in your backyard and spend 10 hours in the sun and just see how you feel without even doing any exercise and bring all your astronaut food out there as well with you and eat all that all day long and just see how you feel at the end of the day. Of course, nobody's going to do that, but you can imagine that you'd feel pretty terrible because again, we are these indoor cats. And I always chuckle when people say, oh, race day, man, it was so hot today. It was unbelievable. And I always say, well, go ask the farmer or the guy who does roofing. Ask him if Saturday was a particularly hot day or if every day is just a hot day and we don't go outside. And it's, yeah, we just go outside in our modern life. But anyway, yeah, we're big in outdoor durability. One thing I'm trying to do this year with winter is I just try to go out almost every day, whether that's a walk or a run or just a ski or just something, but just trying to challenge myself to like, you have to walk outside. You have to go get a little bit cold. You have to sort of earn your wood stove time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think especially like if you live in a city or even I mean where you live, like it's easy to end up doing a lot of training but stay inside the whole day. Like if you're on your trainer, you can have a triple where you do trainer, you do a swim, and you go to the gym. Maybe even hop on the treadmill too. You can exercise for like 4 hours, but you're lacking that outdoor durability piece. So that's a great challenge of the week. I know you have a different one, but hey, get outside every single day, even if the weather is bad, maybe especially if the weather is bad, because you will build some durability points that will help you for your triathlon.
Yep, resilience data points.
Yeah, RDP,
Yep,
resilience
RDPs,
data points.
RDPs.
We love them.
Mhm.
That
All
probably
right,
should.
awesome.
That's our bonus principle, resilience data points. Well, we did it. We made it through main content. So let's rapid fire some listener questions. Challenge of the week in gear. That sound good to you?
Yeah, let's do it.
So first question is, why is my heart rate higher in morning workouts than evening workouts? I've gotten this from a couple of athletes recently. A couple possible reasons here. One is that there's a natural spike in cortisol, which is a stress hormone in the morning, which helps you feel alert and wakes you up. Also, a lot of people have caffeine in the morning, and both of these things can kind of make your heart rate a little bit more elevated. Whereas in the afternoon, it's been a little while since you've had any caffeine, your cortisol levels are coming down. If this bothers you, I mean, I would say as long as it's not the difference between you're at 175 heart rate in the morning and 145 in the afternoon, I'd say if it bothers you, you can try delaying your caffeine intake until after your workout or just like have a little bit of decaf coffee. I would say definitely eat something before you go out because if you're in a fasted state, that'll jack up your cortisol even more. And then for all workouts, but especially morning ones, it's really, really important to gradually ramp up your heart rate. So, like some Z1 walking, some easy swimming, even some tech swimming before your main set, even if your main set is just a zone 2 type run. We'll talk a little bit later about kind of good warm ups and stuff, but it's important to gradually ramp in because otherwise you're going from like sleeping heart rate horizontal straight to like zone 5. And that's not a great feeling. And yes, your heart rate's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Back to our other principle, don't run before noon. So I looked at this question like, who works out in the morning? Wait, what is this? So I have zero input on this one. So
No notes. Awesome.
no notes. Yeah.
Next question here. How do I get a good run warm up in when it's really cold out? This hits home. It was raining this morning and it's been really cold. So Jim talked about, was it RPR, that all warm up?
Yep. Yep.
That's a great idea. Something I've been doing recently is I linked a video for a lunge matrix, which is nice. It takes like 5 minutes. Lunges are really awesome for activating the legs. And then I'll do some band work. So I put a video in there. If you're still not warm after doing those things, I would say like first mile, just super, super slow, but still jogging because walking sometimes can be a little bit too cold. Or you can walk like 5 to 10 minutes with a huge puffy on and then dump it at your house or the car. And then you're ready to go. So you might need to get a little bit creative, but we would never recommend just going straight out the door without that warm up. It's so important, especially when it's cold.
Yeah. Yesterday was pretty cold, so I did RPR inside again, really quick, like 1-2 minutes at the most. And then I did a version of the Awesomizer, which I've mentioned before. And if you look that up, it's Lawrence Van Lingham's Awesomizer. It's basically just it's a hip opener, and you can do that inside. I did a version of that, and again, that was maybe a minute or two, and then I drove to my place to run and did some backwards walking with a coat. I always have a coat on. I always want to make sure that when I'm warming up, I have something warm on, and did some backwards walking and then took off and then had a great run. So there's a lot you can do inside to get warmed up.
Awesome. Love it. And then one thing too I'll add here is we've even experimented a little bit with like a 10 to 20 minute spin on the trainer before like a long run, for example. Again, that's a nice way to just get your muscles totally going. So you can hop on and do like really low watts, but just get the legs going, especially for something in the morning. If you have, say, like a winter long run, that can be something nice to throw in.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, if I had to run my best 10K, I would get on the trainer first.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, my 10K PR lives in a triathlon. So that's like, there's something to it for sure.
Yep, for sure.
All right, challenge of the week. So mine is related to my very first insight, which was all about this like gung-ho excitement in the beginning of training. I'm going to challenge people to skip or modify one workout in your first week of training. Of course, if life makes you do more, that's fine, but minimum of one. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because in the beginning, it can feel like you have to absolutely crush everything perfectly. And if you do that for a week, maybe you think that the next week you have to absolutely crush everything perfectly. But that type of mindset can lead to burnout down the line if you feel like you've created this unrealistic standard. I know that I can be guilty of that. So I would say tell yourself at the get-go that it's okay and even encouraged to not be perfect and be flexible and then flex that muscle. So you're like, oh, this was not a big deal. This was not scary. And sometimes I have to modify or skip a workout. Sometimes it's just not going to work out to be perfect and you will still be okay.
Yeah, I love this one. That's another one. I think it's a big take home for me as well. Like, perfectionism is just a fragile state. And I think I realized that in 2024. And since I sort of get away from that stuff, it's like, oh yeah, like let it go and modify. And yeah, so this is a great one. My challenge of the week is to learn some RPR. And the link I put in there, I think it's about a 15-minute video with Cal teaching some folks RPR. And again, it's going to give you most of what you need in there. So again, just make the investment of 15 minutes, watch the episode, and just do it while they're doing it. And again, I think you can learn for 15 minutes and then, 1 or 2 minutes before that. So anyway, I would love people to check it out and let me know how you feel.
Fantastic. Okay, we're closing it out. Gear pick of the week. This, I don't think is something that's going to take you from the 99 to the 100%, but it's a good recovery mix. So I'm going to recommend the Live Momenteds recovery mix. It's like a chocolate sort of protein powder, but I like it because it has protein and carbs, which you need to know that post-workout, you need a combination of protein and carbs. And I would say that actually sometimes I think you need a little bit more carbs than is just in this plain mix, but I'll use this in a smoothie. So I have a pretty good smoothie recipe where I'll do like a couple scoops of this. I'll do almond milk. I'll do frozen banana. I'll do almond butter, maybe a little bit. I'll do splash of vanilla, blueberries, blend that all up, maybe some yogurt. It's amazing.
Mhm.
And I will make that after big workouts. So this is the protein base for that, and it's worked for me. So highly recommend.
That sounds yummy. And shout out to Momentous. I mean, great products. I've been using their creatine, which I think it's sourced from a facility in Germany. Anyway, so to me, it feels cleaner. It's dissolves well, and I put that in my Greek and Kachava mix as well too. So, but
Nice.
yeah, and I think Momentous is kind of like a pretty legit company. They do a lot of testing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so too. I think they'll have like good sleep stuff. Like their Elite Sleep is like a
Yes.
melatonin supplement. They've got good stuff. So definitely check them out.
Yep. Awesome. And mine's not critical at all, but I've been loving my compressed sport belt. So I used to recommend the Nathan belt, which is kind of a thinner run belt you put on there. But the compressed sport it's much wider, and you can stuff jackets in there. I stuff the whole micro puff in there the day in the
Nice.
back. And I just like to carry like my phone and my AirPods in there. And I can also stuff like a coat, like the Houdini in there, a micro puff. I can stuff in gloves in there. So it's got a lot of flexibility. It's probably like maybe 4 inches wide, maybe 4 inches the belt. But I will warn you, they're a little tight. And so before I went to recommend this, I went to look at my belt and it's like, I know this one's really tight. I don't want to just give people a warning. And I realized that I had ordered or I got delivered an extra small, which I've been using for the last year. And I'm like, man, it's really tight. And it took like a year to stretch the thing out. So then I went ahead and I ordered the medium large, and it came and I put it on and it fit just like the extra small and small
Wow.
because I stretched out this. So anyway, just as a fair warning, they're tight. They're not going to fall down. These suckers they're going to stay on there. It might be a little uncomfortable at first, but just great because, for me, like the run warm up, like I like to, especially when it's cold, I'm not wearing my Houdini to start with. And after the first mile, I get kind of hot. So I pulled it off and again, stuff it right in there. And there's just tons of room. And also, you could probably use this for some light mountain activities in the summertime. And there's also actually a loop you can put your poles in if you bring poles as well, too. So very, very versatile.
I'm intrigued by this, and I would argue that this could actually go in that 99% bucket if you're putting your nutrition and your hydration in there, because that is going to be the 99%. So we're always looking for ways for like our marathon runners, for example, to be able to carry more stuff. If like you need 8 gels over the course of your
Mhm.
marathon, for example, it sounds like that could all fit in there. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, I know there's tights and you've got the cargo things for biking. I haven't done any tights with like deep pockets. I think there's also some shorts out there that have deep pockets. I just kind of like the modular effect of having this big thing. And today, actually, my ski, I was going to bring a Solomon squeezy, soft flask in there, and I was going to put that in there. I would have fit in there perfectly, but unfortunately, didn't have the right tops to it, so I got to deal with that. But anyway, yeah, I was prepared to go out for a 2.5 hour ski and have the ability to carry my phone, my AirPods, my hydration. I would have been easy to put a couple bars in there. I also could put my Houdini in there, and it just again it fits in there, and it just doesn't move, and I don't even notice it. And so I do have some questions about whether it's inhibiting some of the hip extension because it is a little bit tight sometimes. But anyway, I think it's worth it. And I've been carrying more gear a little bit more this winter just to make things a little more comfortable. And it helps me get out the door if I know that, okay, I've got some warm stuff. I can start warm and I can take some stuff off. And if I want to stop and I want to walk, which is not unusual for me coming back from Energy, I can pop my coat back on. I've got all this stuff with me. So it's just, anyway, highly recommend it.
Wow, that is actually one of the better endorsements that I've heard. So I'm gonna put that in my cart right now. Thank you for the rec.
Right.
All right. Well, this was a good episode. We covered our principles. There are a whole lot more out there, but we would definitely cover them kind of throughout the course of this year, of this season. But listeners, please definitely send us your questions, your feedback, anything you want to hear us talk about on the podcast. We are really excited to kind of have this new season kicked off. And as always, are very grateful for the listeners. So drop us a rating, drop us a review, share this with anyone you know. That's a lot of to do items, but if nothing else, just do our PR. That's really the biggest thing
That's
for
it.
this
Yeah,
podcast.
that's exactly right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Super excited about 2025. It was so fun to have everybody here on this podcast adventure in this community for 2024. I just cannot wait to see what happens in 2025. I know it's going to be amazing because all you guys are amazing and you're just feeding us so much like good stories and training and feedback. And so we just really appreciate you guys. So anyway, we will see you all later. Thanks, peeps.